Welcome back to another episode of Projecting Grandeur. I'm your host, Ron Dichter. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being part of our growing community. Appreciate all of you that liked, commented, and most importantly, shared these episodes out. It's awesome to see how we're growing. Today I want to get into it, and I want to talk about people that do things because they think that's the way it's supposed to happen. And let me elaborate on what I mean here. So there's a lot of times where we will do things in business. We will make decisions. We will chart certain courses because that is how we have been told, that is how we have seen, and that is how we believe certain things should go. Whether it means that you should sell a certain way, whether it means that a business, should start out a certain way. There's a lot of decisions that we make in business, and we do it in a way where we look at history, right? We look at others before us that have done it that way, and that then becomes the way in which we do that thing. And I'm not saying that that's not right from time to time, but I also don't want you to go into it thinking just because someone did something before a certain way doesn't mean that it is the right, doesn't mean it is the only, and doesn't mean it is the way that you should, handle that thing. And again, I'm being very abstract here and, talking about, the things that you can do from a sales standpoint, the things you can do from an operations standpoint, product, you name it. I'm not going to get into the weeds of all those decisions, but I want to talk more broadly about when you decide to do something, what are you using as your guiding light to do it? And I often will refer back to a story that I tell, and I'm sure I didn't originate the story, but I can't remember where it started from, so I will just take ownership of it. But it is the story of the woman and the ham. So there is this woman who is getting ready for Easter dinner, and she is cooking a big ham for all of her family and extended family that are coming over and having dinner with them. And she cuts one of the ends off of the ham, so you only have bones sticking out one side. And her daughter came up to her and said, "Hey mom, why do you cut one end off of the ham?" And she's like, "That's a good question, but my mom always taught me to do that, and so it's always stuck with me that that's the right way to cook ham, is you cut one of the ends off." And she thought to herself, She's like, "Well, I'm going to ask about this." So later on, as the family started to arrive, she said to her grandma, "Hey grandma, mom always cuts the end off of the ham, and I'm curious why. Why is it that you cut one end off of the ham and not both, or leave both intact?" And grandma thought about it for a minute, and she said, "That's a really good question." She's like, "Well, my mom taught me to do that, and that makes a lot of sense, and she's always said that that's the right way to cook a ham, and so I've always cut one end off of the ham." And fortunately for this little girl, her great-grandmother was still around and was going to be at the dinner. So when great-grandma arrived, she said, "Great-grandma, mom cuts one end off of the ham, and I asked her, and she said grandma taught her to do that, and I asked grandma, and she said you taught her to do that, and that was the right way to cook ham, and I'm just curious, why do you cut one end off of the ham? What does that do for the ham?" And she thought for a minute and chuckled, and she said, "Oh, silly girl." She's like, "The reason that I cut one end off of the ham was because my oven wasn't big enough to fit the whole ham in unless I cut one end off of it." And the little girl smiled and laughed. And the point to this story is, just because somebody does something doesn't mean that it's the right way. I mean, here you had the great grandma that the only reason she cut one end off the ham is because back when she was in her prime cooking age, the oven was smaller. Well, ovens are bigger nowadays, and you can fit a whole ham in there, but the grandmother and then the mother never thought to question, why do we cut one down off of the ham? But it was the way they were taught to do it, and it was purely just a size limitation that was back in the day. So again, as you start looking at your own business, as you start looking at your own decisions, I really would encourage you to challenge sometimes what has happened before. History is a great way to learn, and history is a great way for you to understand what kind of success or failures you want to have or to avoid. But that doesn't mean that it's the only way to do something. That is just the only way to do something that that person at that time knew was the right way to accomplish that goal. And times are different now. Technology is different now. We have AI now with us. We have tons of resources that we can use, that we can accomplish more, or frankly, a lot more than what a whole team of people could do with just one person. So as you look at your own business, challenge things. Don't accept that this is the way it is because this is the way someone did it before me did it. That doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's how you should focus on it. You just use those things as your guiding starting point and things you want to learn from, but don't use that as the final, end-all decision on what you do in your own business. So think on your feet, learn from the past, but don't let your don't let what is possible be limited by what happened before you. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you find this stuff helpful. Please remember to like and comment, and most importantly, share. Can't get the message out there if we don't share with our most close friends and business colleagues so that they can benefit from this as well. My goal is to help one person a day, so I hope you were the one that I helped. Have a great day. Thanks again for tuning in.